Good morning. Thank you for joining us with the CALEXIT CON 5.0. This is the fourth CALEXIT conference that we've done. Been at this a couple months now, and it's been going very well. I wanted to talk about some of the progress that's been made from the CALEXIT conferences that we've been having. So first, we had talked about a few months ago at an earlier CALEXIT conference about making a partnership with the Baja Independence Group. After we talked about this, we then met with the Baja Independence Group in Tijuana. A week after that happened, or relatively soon, the governor of Baja made a statement talking about partnership with California. So at these conferences, we had talked about amongst ourselves working with Baja. Then we had a conference with Baja. Then we physically met Baja. And then the governor of Baja says, we should work with California a week later, and then met Governor Newsom. So conversations are explored here, meetings are held, partnerships are built, bridges are constructed. And it seems to be that political leaders pay attention. We're working to get outside organizations from climate change to come at the conferences. Originally, we had the vice chair of the Los Angeles Sierra Club agree to come out. We've had a conference panel with conservatives from multiple states across America saying they want California out. Nobody's ever done that, where you have conservatives across multiple states saying, yes, they'd be fine with California leaving. That was the first time ever filmed here. We've had two international panels on that have brought together international actors from around the world. One was the Baja Independence Movement out of Mexico, Alberta Independence from Canada, and the CALEXIT movement had a dialogue with each other here at a CALEXIT conference. At our last conference, at this conference, we had Hawaii and Vermont and Cascadia come on and do an interview, and Hawaii and Vermont dialogued. So our conferences are able to bring together international independence or secession leaders across the world and have them meet each other for the first time and have a constructive strategic talk, and that's being aided and enabled by the CALEXIT movement here. Furthermore, we're going to have some reporters. I think we just confirmed that a former E! Entertainment reporter is going to be here at our next conference. Additionally, we have a Al Jazeera reporter that's going to be coming. Finally, we had developed talking points like this one that you see here. America's broken, can't be fixed, time to leave. That was developed here in the conference. We had talked about what is the message that we're trying to send and how do we get it through to people and how do we make it look. And eventually we did this. So meeting with Baja, having international panels is something that we talked about. We talked about reaching out to international organizations at these conferences. Then we did it, and then we had discussions on how to better phrase our movement, and we have been pioneering those and getting them out. Yesterday, we had Cascadia Independence look at our slogan, and they said they loved it. So that's on video. You can see us presenting our brand new slogan at CALEXIT to another independence movement and getting their feedback, and they said it. So international connections, international dialogue, is happening here. We are influencing governments. We're developing new talking points, and we are able to have reporters come out, and we are able to have dialogue and bring Americans together to say they'd let us go. So a lot of connections being made at these conferences that are open to the public. Additionally, we had a talking point about if Trump wins, we secede, and just straight up saying that. That talking point developed here in the conferences was done so well, we were able to get into the Stockton newspaper and present that idea. So let me go to another point. We also developed our own people. So we have had a lot of people here. I think you can see from CALEXIT 2.0 to CALEXIT 5, people have gotten better. They've gotten better at delivering their talking points and be more powerful. And that's what we also wanted to do, was develop leaders and let people know that there's multiple people in the movement who believe in this and have them ready to meet the public or the news when that time comes again. Okay, so a lot of success with the conferences, but what is left to do? Well, we have to get California to CALEXIT. We have to prove that the system is broken and can't be fixed, and therefore it's time to leave. So part of the issue we've been talking about with these conferences is why isn't there more public on the street support for CalExit? And the reason that we think that is that, or at least one of the opinions, there's a debate, is that Californians don't feel threatened. They feel that it's okay. Now, they certainly felt threatened in November 2016 and throughout 2017, but it's now 2019, and they begin to feel less threatened. I am of the opinion that it's because they've been misled by the California government and the California media, which is telling them that they are winning against Donald Trump, and they'll have him beaten. They're able to sue him on everything he does. All those lawsuits are winning. Therefore, they're able to stop anything that Trump wants to do here in California. I mean, the Attorney General says that, the governor says that, all the media say that. I have pointed out at a couple of these conferences that is not true. That is straight up not true, and I listed the specific reasons. We're going to go into that again. But I do want to say that at one point in November and December 2016 and going into 2017, for at least a 9-month period, there were 2 different surveys that had showed how Californians felt about secession. Stanford and Reuters, Ipsos. So 2 different surveys, both taken around January, February. They showed 32% of Californians, or 1/3, wanted to leave. Additionally, they said up to 15, 17, maybe 18% were open to discussion, which means you're looking at 46% according to Stanford, and 47.5% according to Reuters Ipsos, said they were open to secession. But as we like to point out, both of those surveys undercounted Latinos. So one survey looked at demographic numbers from 2010 when they did their survey in 2017. Well, Latinos became the largest group in California in 2015, 2014. So to not pay attention to that is huge. Additionally, the other survey undercount Latinos by half. So when we actually do those surveys again for Stanford and Reuters Ipsos, and we properly count the Latino percentage, the amount of Californians willing to discuss secession is 56.3%, or a majority vote. Now, I haven't met anybody who said, I used to believe in the movement and now I don't. What I've heard people say is, it seems like you're doing not as much. But I haven't heard anybody say, I used to think we could secede, now I don't. I used to think we could make it as a nation, now I am sure we can't make it as a nation. I used to see, yes, we have our own values here in California and a separate culture from America, and now I just don't feel that way. Nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying that in the news. No politician's saying that. Nobody in our movement said that. Nobody in the streets that we met has said that. People have said that basically they think Trump's going to be removed and America's going to go back to being perfect right after he's gone. So 2 things we want to point out. A, Trump is not going to be removed. He will still continue to be president. He's not going to go. The American Senate will not let him go, and he will run for re-election, and it is highly likely that he will be reelected. And then he will continue to pass horrible laws. A couple reasons why. We're moving ahead, but I'll come back to this. So all of the experts said Donald Trump would not win in 2016, and they were all wrong. So I understand people are saying he's going to be impeached, he won't run again. Why do you believe him? Literally, every expert said this man will not be taken seriously as a candidate. They were all wrong on that. Then they said he'll never be the nominee. They were all wrong on that. Then they said he'll never be president. All wrong again. So that's 3 separate predictions made by the experts where they were wrong. I would caution everybody to think twice before you just accept what you see as to the future of Donald Trump in American politics, because everybody who told you before was dead wrong again and again and again when it came to this man. So why do you think they got it figured out now? Secondly, let's take a look at the economy. 55% of Americans say Trump's doing a good job with the economy. That's during the impeachment hearings. And when we look at the impeachment hearings, they only got 47% of Americans to say they want him removed. You can't even get half of the country, not even a majority, just 50% to say remove the man. That's after everything. you can only get 47%. You cannot even get a majority of Americans to say remove him. But you can get a majority of Americans to say he's doing great with the economy and jobs. What do you think that's going to mean? Presidents who have who are going to serve their second term, are an incumbent, have already been there, typically have a history of winning. Presidents who are presiding over a good economy typically have a history of winning. So when we look at American history, that's two trends that say he's going to be president again. Now you can go, oh, this is different. It's okay, maybe, but maybe it's not. You can't even get a majority of the country to back removing him, but you can get a majority of the country to say he's doing great with my money. Well, a lot of voters vote with their pocketbooks. That's a fact. So, what I'd like to point out is that, and this is a speech I wrote, it's called By 2040 Democracy in America Will Be Dead. You need to recognize that the president is chosen by the Electoral College, which is chosen by the states. The Senate is chosen by the states. So you have the president and the Senate who control the Supreme Court, not chosen by the majority of the public. Okay, that's built into the Constitution. This is what some CALEXIT members are talking about, where America's broken and it can't be fixed. What they mean is by it can't be fixed is that the Constitution, the basic law of America, says each state gets so many Electoral College people and so many senators. That means that they can pick the president even if the majority of the population doesn't agree. They can also control a majority of the Senate, even if the majority of the population doesn't agree. You do not get to have any federal judge without the Senate approving. So you have no control over your federal court systems if you have no control over the Senate. End of story. You have no control over the court systems. The Supreme Court and the lower courts can say whatever they want is legal. Remember, last month, the Supreme Court overturned 50 years of legal understanding. So they can do that now. A majority of the conservative justices a majority of the federal justices are conservative on the lower courts and now on the Supreme Court. And it's going to be even more because Ginsburg is going to be replaced. So what you have is an American system baked into the Constitution, permanently there, can't be changed unless you fundamentally rewrite the Constitution and deny about 35 red states the ability to have representatives choose the president and the ability to have fair Senate representation. So you're going to need a majority of the states to agree to politically commit suicide and say, we don't need to have control over the Senate or the president or determining power over Congress. We're going to give it up because it's the right thing to do. So I would encourage you to go out to Iowa and talk to people about, would you like to make yourself irrelevant for the rest of time and have no power over the laws that are pushed through in Congress and instead just accept whatever New York and San Francisco tell you to do? And then come back and tell us here in CALEXIT what reaction you got from Iowa people about that idea. Because people are talking about they're going to reform the system. No, you're not. You'd have to get a majority of the Senate to approve a constitutional amendment. So right now, the Constitution says these small states get to pick the Senate and the president because that's a majority of them. And then they get to pick all the justices. So you have a federal system that's slowly moving towards being all red state controlled. And it doesn't matter how many people you have in California or if you're the biggest state. It just doesn't. That's not the way the law works. Let's take a look here. Norman Orstein is an expert on this. I want to talk about a statistic I use in every talk. By 2040 or so, 70% of Americans will live in 15 states, meaning that 30% of Americans will live in 35 states. So 30% of American population, 1/3, is going to live in 35 states. They will be older, whiter, rural, and male. More of each of those things all at the same time in comparison to a majority of the population of the rest of America. So 70% of the population of America is going to want something, and then 30% located in the 35 red states is going to say, no, we don't agree, and you're going to have to do what they say. So that's going to happen. That's demographics. I know people like to talk about a blue wave and Texas, but it doesn't matter if Texas turns blue. You'll still have 35 red states who control the presidency and the Senate and the Supreme Court. So blue wave as much as you want. Here's the real demographics of the way America's going. 35 states don't share your values, hate California, and can control you. That's not going to change if Donald Trump's removed. These are demographic trends that go out to the year, well, basically 2040 is when NASA says we're going to have a colony on Mars with a permanent city. So when we have Star Trek, that's when you'll actually see some gain on this. And here's what that means for you. Here's another essay called "The Resist Movement Has Failed to Protect Californians Against Trump." So I don't think Californians are aware of all these things. I bring this up to people, and a lot of times I get blank stares. The federal government can sell 45% of all land in California, which is owned by the federal government, to oil drillers. Supreme Court said they can sell off federal lands. California can't do anything about that. Done deal, that's the law, can't do anything. So you cannot actually protect your land from being sold to oil drillers. Sorry. In fact, it's so bad that the California government chose to not even try to make a bill that would block the federal government from drilling for oil off of our coast because they knew the federal government owns it. So that means the California government basically said, yeah, the feds can drill for oil off our coast anytime they want. And we already lost the thing saying you can't have them drill for oil on federal land. Yeah, they can. Everything owned by the feds, they can drill for oil, they can pollute it, they don't care, they don't have to listen to us. End of story. That's the law. America can ban Muslims. America can refuse transgender people in the army. America can refuse to serve gay people at businesses who ask for something supporting LGBTQ culture. America can profile people if they look Latino, single them out for questioning and harassment. These are all rules by the Supreme Court. This is law. You can't do anything about it. America can do unlimited detentions for immigration. America can deny funding to California because of our sanctuary cities. America can deny asylum for Latinos on the border. California is not allowed to punish any companies that want to build the racist wall, even if they're based here. California can't do anything about any companies that don't want to follow our sanctuary cities policies. California can't stop the construction of that wall, and we can't enforce environmental laws on the wall. That's law. So unless you're able to get Congress and the Senate to agree to constitutional amendments redoing these things, this is the law, you're stuck. Tough. When I talk to people, they're not aware of that. They're like, oh, we're winning on sanctuary cities. We got them. No, you do not. Talk to undocumented immigrants. They're still terrified. You're losing. So here are some Supreme Court cases coming up in the future, aka laws you're going to have to live with and rights that will be taken away from you in the near future. Interesting fact, a lot of these are happening in March and June before the election. So months before the election, the Supreme Court is going to start taking away laws you've gotten used to. So let's take a look at some of those. June Medical Services LLC versus G, March 2020. Supreme Court's going to hear about Louisiana law that requires physicians who want to perform access to abortions to have privileges or the facilities of a local hospital. So if you want to offer an abortion, you basically have to be able to provide full hospital facilities. And if you can't afford that, then you don't get to have your abortion clinic. This is a way to make it where they can't even afford to operate abortion clinics in Louisiana. Basically, they're cutting off access. So the Supreme Court is going to say that states can make laws that make it almost impossible to get access to abortion. As long as they don't technically say you can't have one, they can do things like Texas where they put so many onerous regulations on the abortion doctors that it's basically impossible for them to even operate unless they have, $1 million and a staff of lawyers and everything possible, which most of them don't. So they're just going to make it so hard to get one that basically we're going back to coat hangers. That's what's going to happen. A poor girl in Kentucky is not going to have the money to drive to New York City for an abortion. Let's get real. And if we're talking about Latinos, they especially are not going to have the money. So, dead minority babies, due to coat hanger murders, killing, because we don't allow people to have proper access to medical facilities. So very third world, and that's coming. The Supreme Court's going to say that. You can do nothing about that. Watch for this. Another thing, United States versus Sineneg Smith, February 25th. Now remember, the Supreme Court already said that America can remove funding for violating immigration and do unlimited detention. So this court case in February is going to say, can the federal government punish people for encouraging or helping undocumented immigrants? So not only are they going after undocumented immigrants, they're going to go after citizens who help undocumented immigrants. So you help undocumented immigrants and you do anything slightly wrong, they're talking about federal time, prison. That's never happened before. That will wipe out pretty much anybody willing to help undocumented people unless they, again, are a professional lawyer, have a fleet of lawyer staff on there, because you're looking at federal penitentiary time. So that's really going to hurt. United States Forest versus Calpasture River Preservation Association, February 24th. Can they put natural gas pipelines on federal forest land with only federal approval? That means they have federal land. Can they punch a gas line through it? Don't have to ask anybody for their opinions or consider what any rights or activist groups say because it's federal land. They're going to be looking at that. I will remind you that the Supreme Court already sided against California, saying that yes, the federal government can sell federal land. So now they're going to look at, can the federal government do what they want on federal land? Probably going to say yes, which means back here in California, they can sell your land, they can drill on it, and they can punch gas pipelines through it. Picture a Dakota Access Pipeline here in California that you can do nothing about. So, Celia Law versus Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, March 3rd, 2020. This is another California case that the Supreme Court's taking. Can they destroy the Consumer Financial Bureau, aka the Dodd-Frank Act, which reins in banks? So there's a company based that says we don't want to abide by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's laws, aka which are bound in the Dodd-Frank Act, which was the law they passed to make sure the global recession of 2008 doesn't happen again. And so this company is saying, I don't have to pay attention to whatever this new law is that's supposed to prevent another Great Recession, says. And the Supreme Court's going to look at that and go, do they have to listen to Dodd-Frank or can they just ignore it? That means that the thing that's supposed to prevent another global recession is basically going to be politically neutered. Coming up soon! Now, Homeland Security versus Thurasigium. This is another California case the Supreme Court's looking at. You may notice a pattern. The Supreme Court, now that it's ran by conservatives, is taking a lot of California cases and overturning them. I'm sure that has nothing to do with Donald Trump appointing conservative justice to the Supreme Court. Right. So, Department of Homeland Security versus Thurasigium. Can they deny asylum applications quickly? So they want to be able to say if you've been here and you're undocumented, but you say you need to have asylum because they'll murder you if you go back home, can they quickly go, no, you don't have the right to asylum, and deport them? Because what some people have been doing is saying, I want to file for asylum, and that allows them to stay here for a while longer while that goes to the court. So now they're looking at, oh, are you at risk of being murdered if you go back home? We can wrap this up in days and send you back. So that's coming. I would remind everybody that the Supreme Court already said they can ban Muslims from being immigrated. This is related to that. Okay, moving on. DACA. DACA is probably going to be overturned June, July 2020 because it is an executive action, which means it's up to the privilege of that office. Everybody knows that. Nobody wants to hear that. It wasn't a law because the Democrats did not pass immigration reform. So President Obama was able to change the operation of how he pursued immigration within the confines of the existing law, which means the next president can just change it too, because the president, according to the Constitution, is the one that gets to choose how the policies are being affected. And unless you're going to rewrite that document, yes, Trump has the right to do this. So the Supreme Court's likely going to remove DACA. So I want to point out, the Supreme Court and the Senate are not going to impeach him, will allow him to run, and then they're quickly going to destroy DACA and all that's going to happen before he's, in the next year. So, and that's because the Senate and 35 red states, and you can do nothing about it. So finally, we're looking at Bostock versus Clayton County, Georgia. And this is, can you fire someone for being LGBTQ? So I would remind people, they already said that if you are a business and you can cite religious beliefs, you can deny gay customers. So if somebody says, I want you to have a birthday cake to celebrate my gay wedding, you can say, I don't believe in that and I won't serve you. That's the law. Now they're going to look at one saying, I run a business. I'm religious and don't feel we should have gay employees here. Can I fire them for being gay? So we're looking at DACA being destroyed, people being sent back to countries quickly to die, the federal government punching Dakota Access pipelines through our land, firing people for being gay, and making it sure that we can't actually do anything to prevent another global recession, and making it where you almost can't get an abortion in America. Coming up to the Supreme Court, nothing you could do about it, baked into the system. You have to live with that. So I will end with saying very likely Trump's not going to be removed. He will run for office. The Supreme Court is already conservative. It's going to get even more conservative because there's a couple liberal justices who are just too old. I'm not saying they can't serve, but their body isn't holding up. So I'm sure the brain could, maybe, but their body's not holding up. I think it's a little bit mean to expect somebody in their 80s to just hold on. I mean, I can only imagine telling my grandmother to work a full day, 8 hours a day when she's in her 80s. It would be seen as cruel. And yet we as the American people routinely demand this of their Supreme Court justices. Oh, did you break a hip? Did you break rib bones? Did you have pneumonia? Get back up there. Isn't that mean? And is that really safe for us to count on a few people who are barely holding on to keep the laws here? Trump's very likely going to nominate conservative justices. They're going to get approved by the Senate. But even if he was gone and Hillary Clinton becomes president, she can't nominate anybody and get them on the court unless the Senate approves, which means she's going to have to pick a conservative justice with some liberal ideas to get someone on there. So you're still going to be stuck with a Clarence Thomas. Is he as bad as Kavanaugh? No, but he ain't no liberal. So, and that's the way it is in America. Hence, unless you're going to rewrite the Constitution, this is the future. You're going to have more of your rights taken. Your rights are already taken. The media is just not highlighting it. I haven't seen anybody. I've never seen Gavin Newsom or Becerra come on and say, you know what? We really can't enforce the sanctuary cities policies on any company, and we really can't stop the border wall, and they can pretty much do anything they want with immigrants, as horrible as it is, and we can't do anything about it. That's the law. I have yet to see any California politician admit that, or any major newspaper in California admit that. That's the truth. How come they aren't saying it? Because they're not being honest with you. And it's going to get worse. I mean, just picture DACA's removed in June, July, and then 3 months later, Donald Trump gets reelected. People are going to lose it here. So, just to let you know, be ready for fireworks. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming out. I do want to acknowledge that we are on Tovangar. This land was originally known as Tovangar, still is Tovangar. And whenever you come to the LA region, just tell someone that you know, hey, we're on Tovangar. You know, this was their land. And we can at least, it's not going to kill you to acknowledge it when you get the opportunity. All right. Thank you very much.